On this holy day of the Feast of the Ascension, I have a confession. Here it is. I confess that I could spend hours, and I really do mean hours, exploring Google Maps online. I love Google Maps, and during the pandemic, my love has grown even stronger. I especially like the Street View function where you pick up that little yellow stick figure, drop it on the location that you want to explore, and then you get to see right there on your screen the houses, the landscapes, the architecture, and the streets of almost any place on the globe. I might have been cooped up in my house for much of 2020, but that did not stop me from walking the streets of France, from driving down the roads of England, from exploring the markets of Mauritania, and visiting the most exotic places on earth like Peoria in western Kansas. The satellite view is great on Google Maps, but my favorite is the street view where you get to see the things up close. The things that real people living in real places get to see. Like I said, today is a Feast of the Ascension, and you might be asking yourself, well, what does Google Maps have to do with one of the 7 most holy days of the liturgical year? Well, I'm glad you asked. You see, despite the upward movement and heavenly trajectory of Christ's risen body, Ascension is really about the street view. Sure, Ascension has some pretty stratospheric theology about how Jesus is seated at the right hand of God, where he reigns in heaven. And you know what? I believe that theology. I think it's really good theology. I think it's pretty radical theology at that, because it makes the audacious claim that a poor man who championed the needs of the people and who was executed by the empire has been elevated to a place of power and honor greater than even the most ruthless Caesar. And that's good news. It's quite literally high and exalted theology. But if you read the story in Acts, you'll see that as the disciples gaze up at the clouds, as Jesus is ascending into heaven, perhaps hoping to follow Jesus and enjoy his satellite view, as they're looking up, the angels tell Peter and the gang to reorient their vision downward, more toward the street. Because it's in the streets of Jerusalem, in Samaria, in Judea, and all the ends of the earth, including western Kansas and Peoria, that they will witness to the good news of Jesus' resurrection. Their mission is found in the streets, where the people live, not in the clouds where Jesus ascended. Their view is a street view. Today, on this feast day of the Ascension, we are reminded that we are a people who hold high and lofty theological beliefs. And many of those beliefs are articulated today. And yes, Jesus has been seated at God's right hand in heaven, but he uses that lofty position to empower God's children to love and to serve and to care for each other and to stand against empire right here on earth. Our vision might be oriented toward heaven, but until the Lord returns, our view, like the disciples, is a street view. Amen, and happy Ascension.